Hey everyone, welcome to another adventure. Today, Audio Novel presents Police in Los Angeles by the amazing Mutter. Supporting talented authors like Mutter is what keeps these incredible stories alive. Be sure to check out their Patreon or join their Discord, links are in the description. And if you love audiobooks like this, visit my Patreon for more. Your support helps bring these stories to life. Thanks for being part of this journey. Let's dive into the story. Police in Los Angeles. Chapter 51, The Escape of the Military Humvee. In the evening, a villa near South Cronthal Park was surrounded by the LAPD. Because the criminals they were dealing with were a violent gang equipped with military-grade weapons, all officers were heavily armed, carrying various rifles, and wearing ceramic-plated bulletproof vests. Hondo's SWAT team brought out 2 armored vehicles equipped with battering rams. To search for potential explosives afterward, 5 K-9 officers also arrived with their dogs. Jack's M16 was specially outfitted with a red dot sight today, along with 4 30-round magazines. During the strategy discussion, he had subtly hinted to the higher-ups that killing the foolish Cole was more valuable than capturing him alive. In fact, everyone present was smart enough to understand that only by eliminating King Midas's only son could they sever his prison outreach completely. As for Inspector Gray's promise, since it was SWAT handling the assault, it had little to do with him as a mere district commander. The tacit understanding only went so far. Given the cooperation of multiple departments, trust was limited. If that fool Cole had any sense and surrendered, no one would forcibly kill him. Anyway, with the FBI handling the capture of the 3 key leaders, as long as one agreed to a deal, it would be enough to send Cole to prison to join his dear father for life. At the Wilshire Division, the 2 most senior and experienced officers, Tim and Angela, each led a team to set up roadblocks on the roads leading to the villa. Angela had just over 2 months before her official transfer to the detective unit. Since Hannah left, Jack temporarily became her partner. They arranged 4 police cars in 2 rows, head-to-head, blocking the entire road. After setting up spike strips in the middle of the road, Jack crouched at the front of his police car, setting up his M16. Tim and Lucy were similarly positioned on the other side, waiting for SWAT to act. On either side of the villa, armored vehicles began to move slowly. Hondo's SWAT team, 10 members in total, divided into 2 groups and advanced behind the armored vehicles. The gang members inside the villa, realizing they were surrounded, started shouting and shooting wildly from several windows. Using a dozen police cars as cover, Inspector Gray led the remaining Wilshire officers in firing at the villa's front. A water tower about 100 meters diagonally from the villa served as a vantage point for a SWAT sniper, quickly suppressing the gang's return fire. Listening to the lively gunfire, Jack felt itchy, rarely getting the chance to use a rifle. Spending system points to upgrade it seemed a waste, and now, being assigned to block duty, he had no opportunity to shoot. Seeing SWAT's armored vehicles approach the villa, the oversized battering rams made short work of the walls, creating large holes on both sides of the villa. Then, several flashbangs were thrown in. Jack, observing from afar with his new binoculars, sighed. It seemed he wouldn't get any action today. As he was about to turn away and chat with Angela to pass the time, his heightened senses alerted him to something amiss. He felt a vague sense of being watched from the right, directly facing the villa. It was a small hill about 700 or 800 meters away, with sparse trees. Jack, puzzled, scanned the area with his binoculars. "What are you looking for?" Angela, noticing him peering around, asked, confused. "Nothing, just feels weird, like someone's watching us." Though it was a small hill, finding anything from this distance was like searching for a needle in a haystack. After a while, Jack saw nothing and put down the binoculars, but the feeling grew stronger. Unlike the pinprick warning he felt during the parking lot ambush with John, this was more like being watched without overt malice, yet still uncomfortable. The gunfire from the villa gradually dwindled, suggesting SWAT's assault was going well. Just as Jack pondered what to cook for dinner, a loud bang erupted. The villa's garage door was smashed open, and a military Humvee burst out. Jack's eyes widened in disbelief. This was no civilian model, despite the haphazard iron plating. The faint desert camo of the U.S. Army was visible, and atop the Humvee, a semi-enclosed machine gun shield housed a .50 caliber M2 heavy machine gun, already spraying bullets wildly. Under Inspector Gray's command, the officers providing SWAT with front cover were caught off guard and scattered. Even old .50 caliber bullets turned 2 police cars into Swiss cheese in moments. Fortunately, the SWAT sniper on the water tower succeeded. The CS-5Q sniper rifle took out the gunner in a single shot, silencing the machine gun after only 3 seconds of fire. But a new problem arose. The officers' AR-15s and M16s, with their 5.56mm rounds, couldn't penetrate even standard military Humvee armor, let alone this one with added steel plates. Amidst a shower of sparks and clanging noises, the Humvee rammed the shot-up police cars, speeding toward the road Jack's team was blocking. Jack and Angela quickly ordered everyone into their cars to clear a path. This wasn't about being cowardly or letting the criminals escape. The 4 blocking police cars, each weighing around 3 tons, couldn't withstand a Humvee's charge. If all 4 were wrecked, what would they chase the Humvee with? The Humvee, now on the road and less than 200 meters away, faced renewed rifle fire from Jack, Angela, and 6 other officers. Turning the corner and still gaining speed, Jack held the trigger, emptying 30 rounds into the Humvee's windshield, only to find it futile. The military Humvee's windows were original bulletproof glass, with 5.56mm rounds merely pockmarking the surface. With his current rifle skills, Jack couldn't concentrate bullets on a small area of the moving target to shatter the glass, helpless against the Humvee's narrow front windows. The Humvee, now at 60 miles per hour, rolled over the spike strips and roared past, its tires visibly deflated but still moving. Frustrated, Jack threw his reloaded M16 into his police car, ready to give chase. While they couldn't pierce its armor, the Humvee wasn't a tank. With deflated tires, how far could it go? Military vehicles were tough, with central tire inflation systems, but even they couldn't escape on flat tires indefinitely. As Jack was about to close his door, a strange whistling sound reached his ears. Simultaneously, the Humvee, now about 300 meters away, seemed to be struck by an invisible force. It jumped, and the engine exploded, spewing black smoke. Chapter 52, The Suddenly Appearing Accountant. The military Humvee suddenly lost power and, with inertia, slowly moved forward. Another sharp whistle followed, leaving a hole in the left rear door. Jack could clearly see a plume of smoke rising from the road on the right side. The shot had pierced through. Anti-material sniper rifle, get off the road. Terrified out of his wits, Jack yanked the still-stunned Angela and dragged her off the road, rolling and crawling. He finally understood what had caused the discomforting sense of being watched earlier. Someone had indeed been watching from the nearby hill. The other officers quickly followed suit, hiding beside him. Lying on the road's reverse slope, Jack pulled out his binoculars, scanning the direction of the gunfire. The shooter was calmly and methodically shooting at the military Humvee, 1 shot at a time. While counting the shots in his head, Jack also reported over the radio. "Don't come over yet. Someone here is using a powerful anti-material weapon. The distance is nearly a kilometer. Tell the SWAT armored vehicles to stop, their thin armor won't hold up. The shooter is likely targeting the southern front. The people in that Humvee are doomed." By the 10th shot, Jack located the shooter through his binoculars. Seeing the familiar handsome face and the even more familiar omega-shaped chin, he almost blurted out, "Holy, Batman." All right, this world has both DC and Marvel, but the actors playing those superheroes weren't the familiar faces from his previous life. So, this is a TV drama world, not the Marvel or DC universe. Then who is this guy? Jack wasn't familiar with most male actors from his past life, whether domestic or foreign, except for a few famous ones. But the guy in the binoculars, using a Barrett, looked so familiar. He was flamboyantly dressed in a dark blue suit with a tie, looking more like an insurance salesman than a killer. Seeing his indifferent expression, muttering to himself, and carefully collecting the shell casings one by one into a small box, Jack pieced it together. OCD, killer, chanting nursery rhymes, these keywords gave Jack a clue. This movie wasn't as popular as Batman, but it was a profitable low-budget film, especially with countless AI-narrated clips on Bilibili. It was hard to forget. Seeing the shooter start disassembling the Barrett, Jack stood up and dusted himself off, startling Angela. "Jack, what are you doing?" "It's okay, I saw him. He's disassembling his gun. This guy probably isn't interested in us." Looking back at the miserable military Humvee, blood was already seeping out and dripping onto the road. TSK, Jack quickly ran to the front of the car, not daring to open the door. From 2 or 3 meters away, he could already smell the mix of diesel, blood, burnt protein, and other indescribable odors. Peering through the shattered window, Jack suppressed his urge to vomit and silently walked to the side. The only part of a body still intact was the upper half of a corpse hanging from the machine gun turret on the roof. He couldn't tell how many people had originally been in the car. All the fleeing suspects were killed by an unknown gunman, but I can't confirm their identities. The medical examiner might have to help. A bunch of police cars roared up. Tim and Lucy, who were responsible for the blockade on the other side, arrived first. Mischievous Tim drew his gun and signaled Lucy to check. Silly Lucy really went up and opened the door, then turned and threw up. Kind-hearted Uncle John quickly helped her aside. "All right, Tim, this straight-laced guy deserves to be single. The writers dragging out this couple's plotline for so long isn't without reason." Several big shots arrived, with Ben Sikora, the anti-gang and narcotics chief, looking the worst. His undercover officers clearly hadn't discovered that the Southern Front's lair hid a modified military Humvee. If not for the SWAT sniper's timely response, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Hondo repeatedly confirmed the situation with Jack. Being able to accurately hit a car traveling at 70 to 80 kilometers per hour from nearly a kilometer away, and directly blow up the engine, if such a person showed up in the city causing trouble, even SWAT would be helpless. Chief Gray didn't look too good either. Although the M2 heavy machine gun had only fired for a few seconds, several officers were injured by shrapnel, and 2 police cars were wrecked. However, he was relatively the least stressed. Successfully dismantling the Southern Front, the largest white supremacist gang in California, would earn the Wilshire Division significant merit. Jack guessed the most miserable would be the FBI, absent today. Investigating the runaway accountant would probably trouble them for a long time. The shooter was a pro. The first 2 shots were armor-piercing rounds, likely aimed at the engine. Since the first shot did the job, the second didn't target the engine but pierced the car. Hondo's experience allowed him to analyze the scene quickly. The SWAT team sent to investigate reported that they found nothing at the location Jack indicated: no shell casings, no footprints, only flattened grass and a few broken branches showing someone had been there. Of course, Jack slyly withheld other information. He couldn't provoke someone operating in the gray area. Moreover, he couldn't explain how he knew so much. Let the FBI deal with it. He wasn't some hot-blooded, justice-driven young man. In the original show, didn't the accountant even cooperate with the IRS? Maybe someday, Jack would try to contact him. After all, accountants and lawyers are the 2 professions every American hates but can't live without. The following events had nothing to do with the patrol officers. Back at the station, all officers who fired their weapons were given a week of administrative leave, including Chief Gray, the on-site commander. Zoe would have to coordinate police forces from other districts. The next day at noon, Jack woke up in his bed, feeling satisfied. He kissed Maureen's tear-stained cheek. Last night, he did yoga with the bespectacled girl, exhausting her. Due to the incident involving the Barrett sniper, the FBI had been alarmed, keeping Zoe busy all night. Jack gained an unexpected bonus: the system settlement gave him 2 gold coins, and his psychology skill leveled up to proficient. He now had an unprecedented 10 system coins, enough to upgrade a proficient skill to master level at any time. Just as he finished making breakfast, the doorbell rang. Zoe, in plain clothes and looking exhausted, stood at the door. Chapter 53, Planning a Retirement Life. This time, you might receive 2 medals. As Zoe slurped Jack's homemade noodles, she revealed a pleasant surprise. Everyone involved in the operation will receive a Collective Excellence Award from the main office. They are also discussing whether to give you a separate police star. Jack couldn't help but feel thrilled. Although the police star was just an internal LAPD medal, it was like a direct lift in the promotion path. If he truly received this honor, his police career would undoubtedly be gilded. Seeing his little man looking at her with gratitude, Zoe quickly explained, "Don't look at me like that." Although I voted in favor, the first to propose it was Chief Superintendent Randy McPherson. Jack was puzzled. He had never met this chief superintendent before. Why would such a big shot take notice of him? Zoe covered her mouth and laughed. You probably don't know how many eyes have been on you since you registered that Python revolver at the station, do you? Seeing his still confused expression, Zoe continued to explain, Chief Superintendent McPherson was a friend of Detective Rick Hunter back in the day. He even contributed to the custom fee for that Python. Your Uncle Hunter served in the LAPD for nearly 40 years, and many big names in the department owe him favors. As the main planner of this operation against the Southern Front, the name Jack Tavaler has entered the sights of many top people. Last night, both the Robbery Homicide Division and the Metro Division were asking me about you. Oh, and Hondo seems to be interested in you as well. In his words, his team needs someone who uses their brain more than their muscles. Jack's jaw dropped in surprise. He hadn't expected that, after struggling with social connections in his previous life, he would benefit from them in this world. Life is indeed unpredictable. Looks like I need to formally invite Uncle Hunter and Auntie over again. But before that, shouldn't I thank Chief Anderson properly? With that, Jack scooped Zoe up and, amidst her exclamations, carried her into the bathroom. That 3-meter-wide bed was definitely a good buy, but it seems the bathroom needs a renovation too. The old double bathtub is a bit cramped for 3 people. That evening, after seeing off 2 stunning beauties and busying himself with house chores, Jack wore a mysterious smile until a video call from Hannah jolted him back to reality. Hi, Ginny, how have you been? Hannah's smile in the video was so wide it showed her laugh lines. Jack sneered, only 149 days left. I'll count the days until your return and prepare a big surprise for you. Hannah rolled her eyes, showing no concern for Jack's threat. They then chatted for a while, mainly about the specifics of yesterday's raid. Actually, Jack found the whole thing quite perplexing. His original goal was merely to extract Zoe from potential danger through this plan. Success was secondary. Unexpectedly, the black-faced captain's superb acting fooled King Midas thoroughly. Things escalated from there, even involving that accountant assassin. Fortunately, the ensuing trouble was handled by the FBI. For the Wilshire Division, the potential turmoil from the Southern Front's collapse would be the anti-gang and narcotics division's problem. One of the few perks of being a basic patrol officer was not having to bear too much responsibility. After hanging up with Hannah, Jack finished tidying up the house and began his daily exercise routine. Recently, he had gained a lot. Yesterday's rewards aside, his persistent study and training had also boosted his attributes. His current mental strength had increased to 23 and his physique to 22. His weight had gone up, though his body shape hadn't changed. Now weighing 90 kilograms, Jack suspected his bone density might have increased. The new house's backyard was now equipped with some basic fitness equipment and 2 wooden dummies. Jack had also started a small vegetable patch, laying down ground cover. Although Los Angeles has a Mediterranean climate, mild year-round, it was still December. The nights were a bit chilly. He didn't expect much of a harvest, planting some scallions, ginger, garlic, water spinach, lettuce, and cherry tomatoes mainly to gain some gardening experience. The regulations in America are strict. Front lawns must be regularly maintained, and you can't plant vegetables willy-nilly, or a disapproving neighbor might report you, causing trouble. But the backyard was less problematic. Jack planted a ring of fruit trees near the wall: lychee, apple, loquat, orange, and grapefruit. He even planted 2 mulberry trees, not for silkworms, but for the mulberries. The black-stained mouth from eating mulberries was one of his fondest childhood memories. Jack, you're only 22. Why do I feel like you've already planned your retirement life? The next day, John, who came to help renovate the kitchen, was dumbfounded seeing Jack fussing with the ground cover and fruit saplings in the backyard. I'm just finding a hobby. My dream retirement life is to have a small farm, plant some fruit trees, have a pond for fishing, and raise a few cows and 2 horses. John rolled his eyes, speechless at his friend, who was young enough to be his son. But after a busy day, Jack felt something was off. Former construction contractor John Nolan seemed to be just slightly above beginner level in carpentry. Apparently, he was good at reading blueprints and directing but was on par with Jack in practical skills. Why do I feel like I got myself a supervisor instead of a helper? Jack wondered aloud. John smiled and replied, after I had my own team, I rarely did the actual work. Mostly, I haggled with people. Seeing Jack's puzzled look, he explained further. For instance, I might need to explain to a single mother of 4 why the kitchen renovation is delayed because the tiles haven't arrived, or persuade the bank to give me an extra week to gather the loan. So, when we first encountered a suspect holding a hostage, you chose to negotiate rather than shoot him in the head. Jack pretended to have a sudden realization. Actually, I was thinking of shooting his leg when he wasn't looking. John tried to redeem himself. The recent recommendation slots on Cheatyen have been quite helpful. The data looks good. If it's not too much trouble, please keep reading. I'd like to see if we can reach Sanjiang. Thanks. Chapter 54, Direct Attack. Jack hammered the last nail into the cabinet under the sink and collapsed onto the floor, feeling accomplished with today's progress. Next time, remember to aim for the head. Criminals won't just shoot at your legs. I don't have many friends, and I hope all of you will still be around when I retire. John laughed heartily. Then I'll have to stay healthy, especially keeping a good relationship with my dentist. I don't want to be unable to chew your delicious stew when I'm in my 70s. No worries, I have plenty of recipes suitable for seniors. Even without teeth, you can still enjoy them. Of course, you have to treat your health well. For lunch, they had a simple pasta dish with Jack's homemade tomato sauce, topped with minced meat and a dash of black pepper, which had John singing its praises. For dinner, Jack made a chestnut braised chicken, adding extra sugar to cater to American tastes, along with oyster sauce, Chinese broccoli and fragrant rice. John was so full he couldn't stop hiccuping. After seeing a satisfied John off, Jack was about to start his routine workout when his phone rang. Seeing the unknown number on the screen, his expression turned serious. Jack Tavler, LAPD Wilshire Division Patrol Officer, just finished your internship after half a year, and your record is impressive. You've killed 5 criminals in less than 6 months. Jack remained composed. The familiar electronic synthesized female voice gave him a good idea of who it was. He calmly responded. Thank you for the compliment, but investigating someone's background isn't very polite. Are you a friend of the man in the suit from the other day? The other end was silent for a moment, seemingly puzzled by Jack's calm attitude. After about a minute, the synthesized female voice spoke again. What do you know? I don't know anything, but like you, I'm very interested in you. Silence again. The caller seemed uncomfortable with losing control of the conversation. After a long pause, the call was suddenly cut off. Jack put away his phone and, after some consideration, quickly grabbed a travel bag and left his house, heading for LAX. 7 hours later, stepping out of Chicago Airport, Jack pulled out a disposable phone purchased at a convenience store before his flight and called a car rental company. Soon, a pre-arranged blue Ford sedan pulled up in front of him. Taking the keys from the driver, Jack called the Gothic girl Abby Ciuto. Did you find it? Give me the address. Before 9 a.m., the blue Ford sedan parked at a small shopping center on Wabash Road in Plainfield. Jack got out and found one of the numerous signs hanging on the front of the mall. ZZZ Accounting Firm. With a satisfied smile, he gently knocked on the office door. Come in. Hearing the deep male voice inside, Jack walked into the office. Behind the desk sat a burly white man in a suit and thin-framed black glasses, holding a P-14 handgun equipped with an Osprey suppressor, aimed at him. Isn't this a bit unfriendly for greeting a friend? Jack put down his travel bag from his shoulder, casually dropping it on the floor by the door, and slowly opened his coat to show he was unarmed. I just got off a plane. The FAA wouldn't allow a regular LAPD patrol officer to carry a weapon on board. Who are you? The Batman was confused by Jack's calm demeanor, his gaze wavering. Not good at dealing with people, he was now at a loss with this strange young officer. Jack Tavler, LAPD Wilshire Division Patrol Officer. Didn't your friend already investigate me? Mr. Christian Wolf. Jack sat down in front of the desk, looking directly at the other man until he averted his gaze. Your friend called me yesterday, but I prefer face-to-face conversations, so I came to visit. Christian Wolf put away the P-14, awkwardly loosening his blue tie. How did you spot me then? I checked the sunlight angle, you couldn't have seen the glint from the scope. Jack smiled slightly. Everyone has their secrets, right? Just like you. Think of it as me having an extraordinary sixth sense. He pulled out 5 dimes from his pocket, placing them one by one on the desk, heads up, with George Washington's face on them. He arranged them neatly, even turning Washington's head to face Christian. When he placed the last one, it was slightly off. Tim had been splattered with the infected person's blood, and the vaccine was still in transit, an hour away. After compiling the information, the command center updated the investigation's progress. It was now certain that the terrorists had a backup plan. Jimmy Roskin, Corey's accomplice, was carrying another virus package. He had already met with his local accomplice and could use a nebulizer to disperse the virus in crowded places at any moment, launching a bioterrorist attack. Considering it was the eve of Christmas, any large supermarket or shopping mall would have large crowds. Chapter 61, A Rare Pit Opportunity. The atmosphere inside the car was rather heavy. Wesley, who had been chattering non-stop in the back seat, was now silent. Although he only knew Tim casually, after overhearing the radio communication, he clearly understood the seriousness of the situation. The 3 people in the car had lost their interest in chatting. Jack had a headache. If Tim was infected, such a high-level contagious disease would definitely require strict isolation. He couldn't think of any way to get close to Tim to perform a healing spell. Shaking his head, Jack gave up on those thoughts. As a member of the main group, Tim shouldn't be that easy to take down. Rather than worrying needlessly, it was better to deal with the matter at hand. But the investigation was not going smoothly. With only a few days left until the Christmas holidays and it being the afternoon, most residents in the residential areas were at work. After knocking on doors until past 5 p.m., they had nothing to show for it. Jack bought 3 cups of coffee and handed one to Wesley in the back seat of the police car. They had barely rested for 10 minutes when John called over the walkie-talkie. Today, John's protagonist aura was particularly effective. He had asked the homeless people in the neighborhood park about the suspect's car and identified the exact address, a yellow apartment building. When they arrived, John and Naira Harper had already raided the small apartment, which was empty. John found the room owner's name, Brandon Michel, in a stack of bills. While they were confirming the identity of the second terrorist with the command center, Jack walked into the living room and looked around. There was a messy desk by the window with scattered scraps of paper. These were ready-made clues. Jack pieced together some of the scraps, revealing a forged TSA, Transportation Security Administration, badge pattern with LAX printed on it, which is the code for Los Angeles International Airport. Guys, I think we've found the terrorist's target. The next steps were relatively straightforward. The DHS directly shut down Los Angeles International Airport, and the FBI coordinated all available police forces in the city, setting up roadblocks on major roads leading to the airport to intercept the suspect's blue BMW with fake plates. The CDC has already sent the vaccine to Tim. Now it's up to us to intercept the terrorists in time. Although the DHS has temporarily closed LAX, there are at least tens of thousands of travelers trying to get home for Christmas stuck there. Sergeant Gray informed everyone over the public communication channel. Jack scratched his head as he looked at the heavily congested highway, thinking of an old joke about robbing a bank. He picked up the walkie-talkie and voiced his concern. Given how meticulous these terrorists are, with double insurance for transporting the virus, I doubt they would overlook LA's rush hour traffic. Sergeant Gray quickly responded, "Deployment wasn't led by LAPD, we're just executing orders, myself included." John, who had already had 2 successful interventions today, agreed with Jack, simply blocking the highway has loopholes. Even as someone who's only been in LA for 6 months, I know there's a back road via La Cienega that leads straight to the airport. The communication channel fell silent for a moment, but soon Sergeant Gray's voice came through again. "All right, let's go with your plan. Command Center, this is 7L20. Redirect Wilshire Division units to La Cienega Boulevard and adjust the helicopter route. Keep an eye on the blue BMW." In about 10 minutes, the helicopter in the sky reported good news. "Attention all units, suspect vehicle sighted on Centinela Avenue heading south towards La Cienega Boulevard. California plate V5BU9F7. Angela and Jack exchanged a glance. It was indeed the suspect's blue BMW with fake plates. Soon, sirens sounded in the distance. Naira Harper's voice came over the public channel. "Command Center, 7A15 is in pursuit of the suspect. With Jack flooring the gas pedal, the flashing red and blue lights of John and Naira's patrol car appeared ahead. Angela picked up the walkie-talkie and called 7A26, joining the pursuit. As the car sped up, Wesley in the back seat looked alarmed. "You're seriously keeping me in the patrol car during this?" Angela turned back with a smile. "You're the one who wanted to spend a lovely evening with me, remember? Having second thoughts about dating a cop now." She tossed the handcuff keys to the back seat. "If there's a shootout, hide in the back of the car, we might not be able to cover you." Wesley fumbled for a long time before unlocking his handcuffs, his face pale. Just as he was about to speak, Jack's shout silenced him. "Hold on tight, we're approaching the last gas station before the airport. We need to catch up quickly." The communication channel then relayed a report from the police helicopter. "All units, Air 1 disengaging pursuit. Suspect vehicle has entered the airport no-fly zone." Jack's driving skills were at an advanced level, comparable to John's. However, although John could drive a large truck, he lacked Jack's spatial awareness and reflexes. Moreover, both had undergone basic PIT, precision immobilization technique, training but had never used it in practice. This is where the benefit of Jack's system-enhanced skills came in. With a high-speed drift around a corner, even with an extra person in the car, Jack and Angela's patrol car overtook John's. Jack grabbed the walkie-talkie and said, 7A26 requesting PIT. "We're approaching the airport and running out of time." California's rules for police executing PIT maneuvers are strict, especially in city areas where it's usually prohibited. As patrol officers often patrolling the city, Jack and his team rarely had the chance to perform a PIT maneuver. "Approved, but don't push it. The suspect's car has the virus," Sergeant Gray's voice came through the channel. They had just left the more congested areas, and there was still nearly a kilometer between the two patrol cars. "Wesley, stay alert. The back seat isn't bulletproof. If there's a shootout, don't run around. The back of the car is the safest spot." Jack gave Wesley a stern reminder. It wasn't about dragging a civilian into a dangerous situation, it was about letting Wesley experience Angela's daily life as a cop, which was also a test for their relationship. Angela clearly had her own ideas, and Jack didn't want to meddle. The patrol car continued to accelerate. The Wilshire Division, known for its wealth, had recently replaced their patrol cars with the latest Ford Explorers. These new models not only retained the V6 engine that officers loved but also came with reinforced bumpers designed for pit maneuvers. The past couple of days had been busy with updates, leaving little time to review previous chapters. If any issues arise, please let me know, and I will address them as soon as possible. Chapter 62, Unexpected Developments. Jack increased the car's speed to 120 km per hour. In his previous life, he had watched many pit maneuver videos of American police on Billy, with the Arkansas State Police series being the most thrilling. However, it wasn't as enjoyable when he was the one involved. This wasn't just about flipping the other car. If they caused a virus spill, they couldn't exactly treat everyone there on the spot. Fortunately, the driver on the other side wasn't a seasoned veteran and showed no signs of defensive driving. The small road leading to the airport was in poor condition, making it difficult to maintain high speed. The suspect's car had been going around 80 to 90 km per hour. Possibly because the airport had been locked down, the traffic on this shabby road was becoming sparse. Jack felt the timing was right. Seeing that the patrol car's front was now parallel with the rear of the blue BMW, he lightly nudged the steering wheel to the right, hitting the left rear wheel of the BMW. The blue BMW immediately lost control, its front veering left, but the rear half was pinned by Jack's car, skidding uncontrollably to the right. The driver, in a panic, reflexively slammed on the brakes, causing the tires to screech against the ground, leaving long skid marks before stopping sideways about 5 meters from the intersection traffic light. As soon as Jack executed the pit maneuver, he slammed on the brakes, creating a distance of about 10 meters from the now out-of-control BMW. The fact that the suspects hadn't fired during the chase didn't mean they weren't armed with automatic weapons. After all, terrorists were not street thieves. It made sense for them to have prepared automatic weapons for a planned attack. True to Murphy's Law, as Jack and Angela stepped out of their car and took cover behind the reinforced front doors to issue a warning, an AR-556 protruded from the driver's window of the BMW and began spraying bullets in their direction. The passenger also emerged, carrying a bag with the virus, armed with a Scorpion submachine gun, and started firing at John's patrol car, forcing it to stop. In an instant, the empty street turned into a battlefield with bullets flying everywhere. Jack and Angela, armed only with handguns, didn't trust the supposedly bulletproof doors to withstand rifle fire and scrambled to the rear of the car, where Wesley had already taken cover. "I think we need to install a gun rack between the seats." Jack, irritated, opened the trunk, and while keeping his head down, retrieved an AR-15 and 2 magazines, tossing them to Angela. Angela, inserting ceramic plates into her bulletproof vest, took the rifle and, once both were ready, they simultaneously closed the trunk lid and began taking turns firing, forcing the terrorists to take cover behind their car's engine block. Wesley, caught between them, yelped as hot shell casings from the AR-15s burned him, prompting an annoyed Angela to yank him behind her. Soon, John and Naira also retrieved their rifles, shifting the balance of power. More patrol cars from the Wilshire Division arrived, signaling the end for the two terrorists. Then, a highly improbable and unfortunate event occurred. A bus turned left at the intersection, driven by an oblivious driver who was nodding along to music. By the time he noticed the situation, it was too late. The bus stopped right behind the BMW. "Cease fire, cease fire." Even before Sergeant Gray ordered it, all officers had already stopped shooting. The bus was now parked in the line of fire, with the two terrorists directly behind it. The passengers on the bus looked on in terror, just 20 meters away, as dozens of Wilshire Division officers pointed their rifles at them. "Damn it," Jack muttered as he inserted a fresh magazine. He had planned to try a headshot using the reflex sight, but the terrorists, realizing the police's hesitation, reloaded their weapons. The AR-556 started firing again. All the police could do was watch as one terrorist, threatening the bus driver with a gun, forced him to open the door and jumped onto the bus. The other terrorist, after emptying his magazine, dropped the AR-556, pulled out a handgun, fired a few more shots, and then fled around the corner. "This is bad," Jack muttered, reopening the trunk to retrieve 2 towels, soaking them in bottled water, and tossing one to Angela. To others, it might seem like psychological comfort, but if they did get exposed, they could claim that these towels were what saved them, leaving the CDC to decide whether to believe it or not. "I'll draw their attention. You find a chance to take a shot. Make sure it's a kill," Jack whispered to Angela, confident in her marksmanship. "Angela, it's too dangerous." Wesley, who had been sheltered by his girlfriend, expressed his concern. Angela looked conflicted. A regular officer might hesitate, especially for a job paying less than 10 grand a month. But she, being part of the main team, had a stronger sense of responsibility and was soon to become a detective. With Jack, a rookie, charging ahead, she couldn't abandon him. "Duty calls." She snapped at her boyfriend and followed Jack. Jack wasn't too worried. The Scorpion submachine gun the terrorist had probably had few rounds left, and the 7.65mm rounds weren't particularly powerful. The way the terrorist had been shooting wildly, it was more likely to injure passengers by accident. With ceramic plates in his vest, Jack could take a few hits as long as they weren't headshots. With this in mind, Jack slung the AR-15 over his back, pulled out his Glock, checked the magazine, and cautiously boarded the bus. Meanwhile, some officers from the Wilshire Division followed John and Naira in pursuit of the other terrorist on foot, while others surrounded the bus. Angela suddenly remembered something, motioned for Jack to stop, and ran to Sergeant Gray to whisper something. The sergeant nodded in understanding. When Angela returned, Jack resumed his approach. Peeking over the steps, the terrorist fired a few rounds toward the front of the bus, emptying his magazine with a clicking sound. Taking advantage of the terrorist's distraction, Jack and Angela prepared for their next move, hoping to resolve the situation quickly and safely. Chapter 63, Leaving One Alive. The passengers inside the bus were crouched down in their seats, heads in their hands, screams echoing throughout the vehicle. The idiot driver in the front was frantically trying to crawl out of the driver's seat, screaming in panic. Jack fought the urge to shoot the fool as he watched the driver being pinned to the ground by his colleagues, still struggling, until a taser was applied to his waist, making him shake like someone with Parkinson's. This sight improved Jack's mood considerably. He wasn't the only one displeased with the driver. The surrounding officers, including Sergeant Gray, were all fuming. They had almost apprehended both terrorists, but because of this idiot, one escaped and a whole bus full of passengers was put at risk. Jack peeked again. A passenger had been shot in the shoulder, lying on the seat in front of him, groaning in pain. An empty Scorpion submachine gun lay in the aisle at the back of the bus, and the terrorist was hiding behind a seat, holding a spray bottle high. Jack moved forward, ushering the wounded passenger and several others from the front seats off the bus, giving Angela a clear line of fire. He then stood up, aiming his gun at the terrorist, and started talking to draw attention. While Jack blocked the terrorist's view of the front of the bus, Angela quietly set up her AR-15 on the railing at the front door, placing the terrorist's head in her sight. "Hey, buddy, don't do anything stupid. Let's talk." Jack raised his right hand, holding his gun, while hiding the wet towel in his left hand behind his back. "Let me go, or everyone on this bus gets infected." The terrorist curled up behind the seat, using the nearby passengers as cover. Jack quickly glanced back at Angela. She shook her head, indicating that the terrorist was too well hidden for a clear shot. Outside, everything was quiet except for the screams of the bus passengers. The police lights, which were blindingly bright before, were all turned off. This was Sergeant Gray coordinating with the officers to create a better sniping environment for Angela. Jack had no choice but to keep talking. The bus was higher at the front and lower at the back, so his shooting position was not much better than Angela's. He dared not approach further, knowing that in such a confined space, the release of high-concentration viral liquid could instantly contaminate the entire bus. "Come on, don't be an idiot. You don't want to die, do you? Put down what you're holding. Your plan has failed. No need to throw away your life. How about this? I'll put down my gun and guarantee your safety. You let me handcuff you, and I'll speak to the judge on your behalf, okay?" As he spoke, Jack took 2 steps forward, his pupils constricted as he tried to appear unaware that the terrorist still had a handgun. His raised right hand, seemingly pointing the gun upward, had his finger lightly resting on the trigger. His left hand, holding the wet towel behind his back, was also signaling Angela to get ready. With heightened tension affecting his judgment, the terrorist's decision-making was limited. As long as Jack appeared to be the only threat, the terrorist would likely shoot him rather than release the virus. Sure enough, with an angry roar, the terrorist stood up and aimed his handgun at Jack. Jack quickly sidestepped, giving Angela a clear shot while lowering his right hand and pulling the trigger. With a loud gunshot, 2 bullets were fired. Jack's Glock sent a bullet right into the terrorist's forehead, which shattered the terrorist's brain and lodged in the skull. Angela's AR-15 bullet, on the other hand, entered through the terrorist's nose and exited through the back of his head, embedding itself in the bus's roof. The fragments of bone and brain matter splattered onto a white woman sitting in the back row, who looked up in confusion before letting out a piercing scream. Ignoring the burning sensation in his left shoulder, Jack stepped forward, tossing the wet towel onto the spray bottle next to the terrorist's body. "It's safe now. Everyone off the bus, quickly. Move." Angela opened the rear door from the driver's console, herding the passengers out while approaching Jack. Jack holstered his Glock, wiped his bloody left shoulder, and turned to Angela with a puzzled expression. "Did you shoot me just now?" "Just grazed you a bit." Angela smiled wickedly, her smirk resembling that of a dragon king. $160. It's on your tab." Jack tugged at his now torn uniform, feeling a bit distressed. 7L20, marking my position. No need for further pursuit, the suspect is down. Outside the bus, Sergeant Gray breathed a sigh of relief and reported to the command center via walkie-talkie, then continued to ask. "Harper, have you and John tracked down the escaping suspect?" There was no response for a few seconds, then John's deliberately low voice came through the walkie-talkie. "Command center, suspect sighted at 5824 Elgin Road, checking the backyard." A few minutes later, Zoe's voice also came through the walkie-talkie. "The FAA has approved police helicopters to enter LA International Airport airspace to assist in your search. We'll go help." After wrapping his arm with a bandage, Jack put his uniform back on. He wasn't in the mood to comfort the traumatized passengers and checked if the patrol car's engine was still functional. Wesley silently climbed into the back seat, determined to stick with them today. After making a few turns and driving less than 2 kilometers, Jack stopped at the location John had reported, turned on the spotlight mounted on the windshield, and aimed it at John and Naira Harper's position. They had cornered the suspect in a dilapidated wooden shed in someone's backyard, a makeshift storage shed many Americans built to store tools. Telling Wesley to stay put, Jack and Angela got out of the car, using an old washing machine as cover and setting up the AR-15 on it. Naira was shouting towards the shed. "Hey, you hear the sirens? More of our colleagues are coming, and hundreds more are on their way. You're alone." Before she could finish, several gunshots rang out from inside, making her duck. Jack stifled a laugh and looked at John. Situations like this should be handled by professionals. With the suspect surrounded, capturing him alive would be advantageous when claiming credit later. Whether it was the DHS or the FBI, they had been remotely commanding all day. Regardless of who ended up with the suspect, getting him out of Wilshire Division would require a favor from Zoe and her team. Chapter 64, Bradford's Misfortune. The master of banter, John, cleared his throat and called out toward the tool shed. "Hey, buddy, your pal is already dead. It's over. You might be injured, but at least you're still alive. I've got a piece of advice that could save your life. Think about how much attention you've already received. The internet and media are all over this event. You're going to be the face of this great achievement. It's time to live and embrace this honor. If you die, hardly anyone will remember your name, but if you're alive and sent to trial, you'll be in the spotlight. Think it over." No more gunshots came from inside this time. After a while, a weak voice responded. "I surrender. I've put down my weapon. Don't shoot." "Nice." Jack silently gave John a thumbs up. If the system acknowledged banter as a skill, he'd definitely want John as his teacher. Even judging by psychological skills, Jack believed John's skill level was nothing less than proficient. 20 minutes later, CDC doctors, who finally arrived, confirmed the area was safe. The injured suspect was taken away in an ambulance to the nearby Memorial Hospital. Jack removed the magazine from his rifle, placed it back in the patrol car's trunk, and overheard Angela and Wesley whispering. "How about a kiss as a make-up for today's actions? Or you can choose to sue me." Wesley seemed a bit proud. "An hour ago, I wasn't sure, but when you bravely boarded that bus and saved everyone on it." He was probably trying to express admiration for his girlfriend, but Angela, with a smug look, interrupted him. "That made you feel a bit aroused, didn't it?" Jack couldn't listen anymore. He slammed the trunk shut, interrupting their shameless flirting. "There's a motel on the way. If you two can't wait, I can drop you off, but please, cut it out." He missed dinner again today, but he'd rather grab a burger on the way back than be fed dog food until he was full. However, there was one last thing to do. Tim, trapped in the infected person's house, was still unaccounted for, and Lucy had been waiting outside the quarantine area for him. With all the terrorists now captured, it was time to check on the old man. Jack conducted a quick self-assessment in the car. Despite a busy day and a close call with death, he surprisingly felt fine. Though slightly irritated, he didn't have the usual overwhelming urge to act out. It seemed his body was gradually adapting to these dangerous situations. Once again, it was a car with 3 people, followed by John's police car, totaling 5. They soon arrived at their destination. By now, it was deep into the night, but the lawn in front of the small yellow house was brightly lit. The CDC bus was parked by the road, and a group of CDC doctors in protective suits was busy disinfecting the area. Jack got out, patting his growling stomach, and saw Lucy coming out of a makeshift plastic tent with a worried look. Her uniform buttons were undone, suggesting she had just finished cleaning and disinfecting. Seeing the group arrive, she forced a smile and greeted them. "Hey, I heard you guys became heroes today and saved the world." Compared to their previous plan to take down a white supremacist gang, Jack felt his contribution today was minimal. John was the real hero, having discovered several key clues. "Thanks to John. We were just doing our job." John seemed distracted, not even noticing the praise, and anxiously asked, "I'm glad you're okay. How's Tim? I heard he and the victim's body were locked in the bedroom for hours." Lucy tried to appear confident. "I think he'll be fine. The CDC vaccine has arrived, and Tim has been injected, but he needs to be observed in the hospital for 24 hours. Everyone fell silent. According to Dr. Morgan, even with the vaccine, there was a 60% mortality rate. The mood became somber. At that moment, the door opened, and Dr. Morgan, fully protected, accompanied Tim out. Seeing the group, Tim, usually stern-faced, seemed a bit moved. But his expression only slightly softened, making it hard to call it a smile. Dr. Morgan, oblivious to the emotional tension, removed his mask, looking as calm as when he coldly delivered those grim statistics at the station. Jack was familiar with such people, high IQ, low EQ, struggling with emotional interactions, driven by rational thought over normal feelings, like the lead character in Bones. While they didn't offer comfort, they also didn't hide the truth. Morgan spoke bluntly. You were exposed to a viral concentration near the threshold, so you likely dodged a bullet. Clinically, you've shown no infection symptoms so far. To be safe, we vaccinated you. Now, we just wait. The group's mood lifted slightly. As Jack stepped forward to fist bump Tim, intending to discreetly use a healing spell, Tim suddenly went pale, rolled his eyes, and collapsed. Tim. Officer Bradford. What's wrong with him? Call for help, get the ambulance. Stay back, don't get close. Everyone rushed forward but was quickly held back by the alert CDC doctors. Jack's fingers barely brushed Tim's coat, just missing his body. Is this guy really that unlucky? Jack stood dumbfounded as he watched Tim convulse on the ground like an epileptic. Is it the virus? Lucy, also restrained, asked sharply. No bleeding signs. It looks like anaphylactic shock, his body is reacting to the vaccine. Dr. Morgan remained calm, directing 2 medics to restrain Tim and shouting to the standby ambulance. Get an epinephrine shot, now. After the injection, Tim quickly stopped convulsing but remained unconscious. Watching him being loaded into the ambulance, Jack patted the still stunned John. Get in. We'll clear the way for the ambulance. Chapter 65, Burning with Rage. Command Center, this is 7A26. We are escorting a CDC ambulance to Memorial Hospital, heading east on Grand South Avenue. Requesting road clearance. Jack called the command center over the radio while turning on the siren. His patrol car led the way, followed by John's, with the ambulance right behind them. The command center quickly responded, copy that, 7A26. Highway patrol is en route to assist. Under the escort of the 2 patrol cars, the CDC ambulance sped to the hospital at an average speed of about 120 km per hour, reaching the hospital entrance in just 8 minutes. Hey, can we get some help here? John shouted to the medical staff in the emergency lane. Jack got out and quickly walked to the back of the ambulance, intending to open the door and see if he could touch Tim. Suddenly, he felt a chill down his spine and heard John's panicked shout. There's a shooter. Before Jack could turn around, a volley of bullets whizzed past his shoulder, hitting the rear door of the ambulance and leaving a row of bullet holes. Damn it, when will this end? Already somewhat on edge, Jack didn't dodge but turned swiftly. He saw a white woman holding an M4 carbine, using a stone pillar by the hospital entrance as cover, firing at the ambulance and the 2 patrol cars. John, Neela, and Angela reacted quickly, returning fire with their Glocks, sending shards of stone flying as the female shooter ducked back behind the pillar. Fuck you, bitch. Jack was enraged to see 2 medics, who had just come running out from the emergency entrance, lying in a pool of blood. The thin metal of the ambulance's rear door certainly couldn't withstand 5.56 standard rifle rounds, leaving the people inside's fate uncertain. He drew his Glock with his left hand and his Python revolver from its underarm holster with his right, dual-wielding as he advanced towards the stone pillar without flinching. Lucy emerged from the side door of the ambulance, immediately blocked by Jack, and shouted a warning. Jack, I'm right behind you. Jack ignored her and continued his determined stride forward. Come out. Your buddy on the bus was killed by me. If you want revenge, come on out. It didn't take much thinking to realize that this female shooter was likely the accomplice of today's 2 terrorists. Why she didn't participate directly in the attack earlier was unclear. Now she was here, either to rescue her comrade who had been sent to this hospital or to take revenge on the police, or possibly both. Jack, what are you doing? Be careful. John and the others stopped firing as Jack moved into their line of sight. Their initial shooting angles were poor, with the stone pillar the shooter used as cover just in front of a glass wall leading into the hospital interior. Any stray bullet could easily injure civilians inside. Jack moved swiftly, closing the distance to the pillar in a few steps. The shooter, hearing the calls and the approaching footsteps, sensed danger and tried to aim her M4 at him, only to be forced back by Jack's precise and rapid gunfire from both hands. After emptying both guns, Jack lunged forward, grabbed the barrel of the shooter's rifle, and yanked her out from behind the pillar. The scorching barrel burned Jack's left hand, the pain further fueling his anger. He headbutted the woman brutally, smashing her face, then grabbed her right hand, still clutching the M4, and wrenched it, dislocating her wrist. The M4 fell to the ground. Jack wasn't done. He grabbed her collar and headbutted her several more times until she collapsed. Fucking bitch, attacking civilians, bastard, scum, son of a bitch. John and Angela rushed over, grabbing Jack's arms. They had never seen this usually smiling guy lose control like this and feared he would continue attacking the unconscious suspect. She's fine. If I wanted her dead, I'd have crushed her larynx with the first hit. Jack waved them off, indicating he was okay. He saw Neela Harper cuffing the shooter, who was vomiting from a severe concussion, then turned to the ambulance. Tim was standing at the rear door, gun in hand, looking dazed. Jack wiped the blood from his forehead. He had only a minor cut, most of the blood was from the shooter, whose face was basically ruined. Are you crazy? You're going to get yourself in trouble. Angela nervously glanced at the patients and medical staff pouring out of the hospital, many of whom were filming with their phones. While terrorists had no rights in the USA, public actions could be misinterpreted and maliciously edited to paint the police in a bad light. Jack had no time to worry about that. He wouldn't have been so impulsive with a regular suspect. But this was a hospital. If the shooter had turned her gun on the glass wall behind which civilians were, who knew how many would have died? Besides, the media landscape in this world wasn't as toxic as in his previous life. The LAPD's PR department was still quite capable. He kicked the M4 on the ground, which had two 30-round magazines taped together. Neela Harper pulled another 3 magazines taped together from the shooter's belt and tossed them aside. Jack did the right thing. She wasn't here to rescue her comrade, she came to massacre. We were just lucky to be here. Tim, still pale, came over and nodded at the taped magazines. She's had military training. This is a common battlefield method for quick reloading. Jack looked at him and asked, "Are you okay? Is anyone in the ambulance hurt?" Tim shook his head. Dr. Morgan got grazed, but everyone else is fine. Just then, the backup police arrived. Superintendent Gray, looking furious, got out of his car and started yelling at a DHS agent. The group overheard bits of the argument and gathered that DHS had known about the existence of the female shooter while investigating the first victim but had withheld the information from the LAPD, even keeping it from the FBI. The crowd glared at the DHS agents. While knowing about the shooter wouldn't have guaranteed predicting her attack on the hospital, they needed someone to blame for the risk they'd taken. The DHS had to shoulder the blame. After all, the conflict between federal and state police systems was serious. The LAPD's Wilshire Division had earned MVP honors for this case, and the CDC and FBI would share in the accolades. Someone had to take the fall, and the DHS was the perfect scapegoat. The aftermath would be handled by higher-ups, irrelevant to the patrol officers. They could look forward to promotions and raises. John and Lucy would likely soon shed their rookie status and might even earn a medal. Chapter 66, Tyler Kelly. Jack picked up his 2 handguns from the ground, noticing 2 slight scratches on the ivory grip of his Python revolver. He felt a bit distressed. This artwork of a weapon was more expensive than the second-hand car he was currently driving. The 2 wounded medics were rushed inside for emergency treatment, and the female shooter was also taken into the hospital under police custody for her injuries. Dr. Morgan, seemingly unfazed by the chaos, held a bandage to his grazed arm and nodded at Jack. "Come on, Officer Bradford needs to be quarantined for 24 hours, and you should come with me to treat your injuries." Jack entered the hospital, his mind elsewhere. Initially, there hadn't been much to worry about, but the recent incident left him with a headache. Zoe would undoubtedly be busy tonight, and the spectacled girl had reportedly been assisting the FBI with profiling a serial killer and wouldn't be back until before Christmas. Was he going to spend the night alone at home? The thought was quite disheartening. His arm, grazed by Angela's bullet, was rebandaged, and the slight scrape on his forehead was treated with ointment. The burn on his left hand was discreetly healed with a spell, leaving only a minor redness. Soon, the once brave Jack made a hasty exit from the hospital, not only dodging young nurses eagerly asking for his contact details but also avoiding middle-aged women trying to slip notes into his pockets. As he stepped outside, he saw John and the others still there, being interviewed by a pretty blonde reporter with a cameraman. Starving, Jack was about to sneak away when Lucy called out to him. "Jack, this is the heroic officer from earlier. Any questions, feel free to ask him." The group, all in sync, stepped back, and a microphone was promptly shoved in Jack's face. "Hello, Officer Jack Tavares. I'm Tyler Kelly, anchor for Channel 8 News. Would you mind sharing the details of how you thwarted this violent act? The public would certainly be interested." Having a TV camera in his face for the first time in 2 lifetimes, Jack felt slightly nervous but maintained his signature shy smile, flashing a set of white, perfectly aligned teeth under the fill light. Protecting the public is the duty of the LAPD. Stopping this premeditated terrorist attack was a team effort of all officers at the Wilshire Division. "I'm sorry, the case isn't fully closed, and I can't reveal too many details. My colleagues and I have been working since morning till late at night, hardly having eaten. If you don't mind." The young, attractive reporter seemed particularly understanding, signaling the cameraman to stop filming, but she didn't let Jack off the hook just yet. Biting her lip, she gave him a sultry look. "Would I be honored to invite the brave officer for dinner?" Jack quickly replaced his professional smile. Wasn't this smile supposed to be especially effective on maternal figures? Why was this young lady, who seemed about the same age as Hannah, interested? "Well, I already made plans with my colleagues. They're waiting for me." Not good at refusing women, Jack gave an awkward smile. Tyler Kelly didn't push further but slipped a business card into Jack's uniform pocket, her delicate hand seemingly brushing his chest muscles intentionally. She mimed a phone call gesture, mouthing the words, "Call me," without sound. "I saw her assault you. Should I arrest her for you?" As the journalists left, John stood beside Jack, teasing with a broad grin. Jack rolled his eyes in disdain. He preferred watching drama rather than being the center of it. He then glared at Angela, who had a peculiar expression on her face. "Tonight's dinner is on me, but you still owe me for the uniform. No ratting me out to Hannah." Though they called it dinner, it was just a quick bite at a burger joint before everyone went their separate ways. Regardless of any administrative leave tomorrow, they all had reports to file at the station. Except for Lucy, everyone had fired at least one magazine. Feeling troubled, Jack drove his second-hand Chevy Spark home. He parked in the garage and was about to close the door when a familiar figure opened the passenger door and jumped in. Jack was startled but quickly realized it was Zoe, and his hand moved away from his Glock. "I thought you'd be busy tonight." After a passionate kiss that left him breathless, Jack asked. Zoe licked her slightly swollen lips, leaned over the center console, and reclined his seat, pressing her body against his. Her gaze turned dangerous. Was that Channel 8 reporter pretty? With his survival instinct kicking in, Jack quickly handed over the business card. "Not as classy as you, her skin isn't as nice. She relies on expensive makeup. Look at you, you don't even need wax." He gently caressed her smooth cheek with the back of his hand. Zoe flipped his hand over and pressed it against her face, sighing. "I just wanted you to know that Tyler Kelly's father is a judge at the LA Superior Court. She's aware of your relationship with Hannah and deliberately came to provoke you." "Really?" Jack was surprised, not expecting the news anchor to have such a significant background. "Do they have a grudge?" Zoe shook her head. They were high school classmates after Hannah moved to LA, and fierce rivals. They competed in everything from academics to extracurricular activities, even fashion. Their rivalry has lasted for years. Jack suddenly understood. "So she flirted with me to embarrass Hannah." Zoe thought for a moment. "Maybe. She could also be curious. I even suspected she had a crush on Hannah." "Hiss." Jack gasped. She was not just a rival but a potential romantic threat. Don't worry, I'll keep our integrity intact. No chance for the enemy to exploit. Zoe laughed, collapsing onto him. I know you too well. You can't refuse a pretty woman, especially not one like her. This was definitely not the time to agree with her, so Jack refrained from saying anything further, almost swearing an oath of celibacy. Chapter 67, Receiving the Medal. Zoe completely ignored Jack's oath and coquettishly leaned forward, licking his ear. Jack shivered and incredulously asked, "Here. We've never tried it in the car, have we? My garage door isn't even closed. The windows are closed, aren't they? I think I should consider getting a new car." As he was indulging in the moment, a nursery rhyme from his previous life faintly echoed in Jack's mind: Daddy's daddy is called Grandpa, Daddy's mommy is called Grandma. The successful resolution of this terrorism case indeed brought great pride to the LAPD higher-ups. Commissioner Gray's promotion was practically guaranteed, and both John and Lucy would face evaluations right after the Christmas break. If they passed, they would end their rookie period. The department was even generous enough to allocate some funds as bonuses to the meritorious officers, which was undoubtedly good news for Jack as it meant his bathroom renovation plan could proceed. Due to the complexity and involvement of multiple units in the case, everyone was given a 2-week administrative leave, which was a rare treat for officers who usually had to rotate shifts even during Christmas. However, this also meant that their planned gathering was cancelled. John flew back to Pennsylvania to see his son and handle property matters with his ex-wife. Tim, perhaps having gained some clarity after his near-death experience, went back to his hometown to visit his long-lost sister. Angela and Wesley, who had recently become inseparable, had officially moved in together and went to Hawaii for vacation. Lucy whispered that Wesley might propose during the trip. Jack, who enjoyed gossip but disliked romantic drama, didn't bother to dig into their affairs. Besides exercising and studying, he had a new dining companion, Neela Harper, who loved spicy food and was as much a heavy drinker as Tim. Neela Harper had a tragic story herself. She abandoned her family for her career and went undercover in a gang for years, only to end up with a broken family. Now, she chose to return to being a regular patrol officer to have a stable job and more time with her daughter, though she had lost custody. Through her experiences, Jack became more resolute in his belief that he would never go undercover. If anyone tried to persuade him, he'd knock some sense into them. Of course, her meals weren't free. After a few Sichuan dishes, Jack managed to extract a wealth of information about drugs, dealers, and related gangs from Harper. This knowledge wasn't available in books and could only be gained from a seasoned undercover officer like her. Now, when Jack looked at the tattoos on street kids, he could identify their gang affiliations and whether they had committed any serious crimes. He also became adept at understanding most of the gang slang. Besides this, he didn't idle. After renovating his kitchen, he began working on the bathroom, demolishing the old tub and building a large concrete frame that took up 2/3 of the space. He then bought a bunch of treated marine oak planks, applied 3 thick layers of waterproof coating to the concrete frame, and meticulously fitted the oak planks inside, sanding them smooth. The result was a luxurious bathtub that could comfortably fit 3 people. It was undeniably comfortable, both Zoe and Maureen praised it. However, due to certain unspeakable reasons, neither could spend Christmas with Jack. Maureen had to attend the Anderson family Christmas dinner as her partner. Jack, indifferent to Christmas but regretting the cancelled dinner with John and the others, ended up at the Hunter's house, where he made dumplings for the elderly couple, and they had a joyful time. In the first week after New Year's, just before the end of the holiday, everyone, including Angela who was vacationing in Hawaii, returned for the LAPD's annual New Year's banquet. Even the governor attended the banquet to present medals to the officers. Besides Jack and 4 other officers from different precincts receiving the police star, John and Lucy, as rookies, surprisingly received a Distinguished Service Medal. The Wilshire precinct also won an Outstanding Unit Commendation. It was a night of triumph. As the representative receiving the Outstanding Unit Commendation, Commissioner Gray was visibly emotional, even shedding a few tears during his speech. Standing on stage with his medal, Jack watched this scene and couldn't help but smile. It seemed it wouldn't be long before everyone started calling Gray Chief Gray. Bored, Jack glanced around the venue. Many familiar faces were present. Maureen attended as Zoe's date, or partner, with the two stunning women, one in uniform and the other in a glamorous evening dress, their eyes frequently drifting towards Jack. The hunters were there, having just shared a meal with Jack. Zoe's grandfather, old Anderson, was also present. Jack had seen his picture in Zoe's family album, and it seemed he was close with the hunters, chatting animatedly with them. Jack recalled Zoe mentioning that the congressman behind the Kleiner Foundation was about to fall, with old Anderson playing a significant role in his downfall. He hadn't expected the Anderson family, a local powerhouse in California, to wield such influence even in Washington. He pondered whether to contact his accountant, Christian Wolf, soon. The terrorism case and 2 medals had earned him 6 system gold coins, far exceeding his expectations. This meant he could significantly advance their original 3-month plan and obtain a favor from the accountant. He wanted to leverage Christian and his backer Justin's abilities to conduct preliminary reconnaissance on the Kleiner Foundation. After all, when he had watched the show, he had focused too much on the explosive action scenes and only remembered the Foundation's name and their counterfeit money operation. Lost in his thoughts, Jack suddenly felt a peculiar gaze on him. He followed the direction and saw Taylor Kelly, the news anchor, in a low-cut blue starry evening dress, holding the arm of a man in his 50s or 60s with a dignified demeanor. Her beautiful eyes were fixed on him without blinking. Chapter 68, The Sweet Taste of Privilege. Jack felt a tingling sensation in his scalp. Though he wasn't entirely politically correct in his thoughts, he certainly didn't mind attractive women being close to him. However, the pair who had misbehaved in the back of his patrol car when he first joined the precinct were an exception, too much of an eyesore and utterly disgusting. For most lecherous old men, seeing 2 attractive women getting intimate was only a pity for being wasted, followed by pure appreciation. The problem was, this seemingly attractive woman seemed to be targeting his girlfriend, which was displeasing. Though he was confident in Hannah's sexual orientation, as Zoe had mentioned their long-standing rivalry, it shouldn't have dragged on until now if something were to happen. But if she employed indirect strategies, it could spell trouble. Jack wasn't good at rejecting beautiful women in his previous life, let alone someone only slightly less curvaceous than Hannah. Sure enough, after the awards ceremony, Jack had barely taken a few steps off the stage when Taylor Kelly, smiling brightly, stood in front of him with the distinguished-looking middle-aged man. "Officer Jack Tavola, I didn't expect us to meet again so soon. This is my father, Vincent Kelly." Seeing the middle-aged man extend his hand, Jack quickly responded with a respectful handshake. "Hello, Your Honor." As a judge in the LA Superior Court, Vincent Kelly was approachable but had little to talk about with a low-ranking patrol officer like Jack. After a few polite exchanges, he seamlessly integrated into the group with the police commissioner and the governor. Taylor Kelly, however, remained standing before Jack, her sweet smile now tinged with a hint of reproach. "Why haven't I received your call? Do upper-class girls in the USA always act this directly?" Jack instinctively put on his business smile, his pearly whites dazzling under the lights. "I'm sorry, Miss Kelly. I already have a girlfriend." His gaze unintentionally fell on her chin, where 2 pimples, barely concealed by foundation, had appeared since their last meeting. Noticing the slight redness in her pretty blue eyes, he mused that the job of a news anchor was indeed tough. "Am I not better than that country girl Hannah from Texas?" Taylor Kelly's tone carried an air of superiority but couldn't hide the mischievous glint in her eyes. "TCH, what kind of cheesy American teen drama lines are these?" Anyone unaware might think she was attending a high school prom. Realizing that she was a bit of a drama queen, Jack nearly sang out, "Please don't insult the goddess in my heart." There were 2 stifled laughs behind him. Zoe and Maureen were eavesdropping. The banquet hall was crowded, and Taylor Kelly didn't have Jack's keen hearing, nor did she notice the 2 elegant women pretending to whisper behind him. Knowing her act had been seen through, Taylor Kelly smiled wryly. "It seems Hannah told you a lot. I know she pursued you, but I'm still curious, in your eyes, how am I not as good as her?" Jack didn't reply, scrutinizing her again. To be fair, the low-cut blue starry evening dress did suit her, blending sweetness with a touch of cunning. Noticing Jack's gaze lingering on her chest, Taylor Kelly's face darkened, and she gritted her teeth. "Are you still a nursing infant?" Though the cleavage looked a bit forced, it was still better than Lucy's B-cup, but not as impressive as Maureen's, let alone Zoe and Hannah's ample figures. Finally, Taylor Kelly left in a huff, leaving Jack to sigh, wondering about this whole ordeal. Was this news anchor genuinely interested or just out to antagonize Hannah? Ordinary men would quickly succumb to such a well-connected, attractive woman, but he, being the good man he was, could resist. He would definitely seek some compensation from Hannah later, and if not, her sister might pay some interest first. Have you heard of the BAU? Amidst the steam and the scent of oak in the bathroom, Maureen had instantly fallen in love with Jack's homemade large bathtub, often soaking for an hour each time. Acting as a human cushion, Jack shook his head. Americans love their bizarre acronyms. It's the Behavioral Analysis Unit under the FBI. They're rebuilding a team to handle nationwide serial cases, and they need a smart, capable rookie. I recommended you. Are you joking? Jack was surprised. He knew Maureen was a specially appointed LAPD psychologist, but he didn't realize she had such influence in the FBI. Him, a rookie cop, catching the FBI's eye seemed exaggerated. Maureen stretched comfortably, her floating curves mesmerized Jack. Actually, they found me. I was assisting the BAU with a profile on a serial murder suspect, and they had some questions about your file, so they asked me to verify. Jack looked up at the ceiling, trying to stay focused. Why would the FBI be interested in a rookie cop's file? Maureen rolled her eyes. You've had a lot of administrative leave in less than 6 months at the Wilshire precinct. Jack was stunned, thinking he wouldn't have racked up so many kills without the main crew. The BAU wants a rookie without fixed thinking patterns, but with real-world experience and strong learning ability. They reviewed numerous files, narrowing it down to 5 candidates, and you were one of them. I told them you were my student, set to pursue a master's in psychology under me after completing your bachelor's. The BAU checked your academic records and chose you. Jack was thrilled. This saved at least 3 or 4 years of effort. This privilege was indeed sweet. Professor Cahill, I don't know how to thank you enough. Maureen moaned softly, slapping away his mischievous hand. Carry me out, the water's cold. Chapter 69, A Desperate Father. Though Jack had been preselected, the BAU task force was still being reassembled. Until the internal FBI processes were complete, he had to stay with the LAPD for about 6 more months and then head to Quantico for 5 months of training, just like Hannah. Only after passing the tests and officially becoming an FBI agent would he be assigned to the BAU. According to Maureen, this was already considered fast progress in the federal bureaucratic system. This worked out well. For now, Jack would visit Hannah's house monthly to help with chores and maintain the lawn, preventing squatters from taking over. For months later, it would be her turn to look after his house. Shortly after the holidays, John and Lucy passed their rookie exams with high scores, successfully transitioning to full officers. Jack's luxurious new kitchen finally opened, and a feast of Hunan cuisine and Sichuan hot pot sent Tim and John straight to the proctology department of the Central Hospital, satisfying Jack's long-standing grudge. However, John, being the protagonist, turned misfortune into fortune and received attentive care from Dr. Curris. As their relationship flourished, Jack sincerely hoped they would avoid any more mishaps. Without the interference of foolish screenwriters, the old lovers had a good chance of making it. As for tough guy Tim, after revealing his soft side to Lucy when he thought he was going to die locked up with a virus carrier, his tough image was further shattered by this hospital incident, rapidly advancing their relationship. The terrorism case and 2 LAPD medals earned Jack 6 gold coins. After much hesitation, he decided to use 15 of his 16 system gold coins according to his previous plan, 5 points for proficiency in psychology and 10 points to master healing skills. He then notified the accountant that everything was ready for his visit. Recently, Angela had been even more elated than Jack. After the Hawaii vacation, Wesley, a promising lawyer and wealthy second-generation heir, officially became her fiancé. Her detective internship was also going well, and she had started handling cases. It seems our days patrolling together like this are numbered, Jack said, driving and chatting with Angela in the passenger seat. He couldn't share the news about his potential departure from the LAPD, unlike Angela, who was grinning like an idiot every day. Don't worry. When I officially become a detective, I'll request you as my assistant. You're LAPD's rising star now. Even some pretty girls at the dispatch center have been asking about you. If we're talking about rising stars, that would be John. Commissioner Gray recently assigned him to a night shift detective to assist with investigations. Jack's words sounded insincere, but his smile betrayed his true feelings. Just then, the radio crackled with a message from dispatch. 7A26, residential silent alarm, manually triggered, multiple emergency calls. Angela quickly picked up the radio. 7A26, responding. Due to the silent alarm, Jack turned off the siren as they approached the location. The alarm was coming from a sizable garden villa with a 3-meter-high wall equipped with multiple sensors. A sturdy iron gate with a video doorbell stood at the front. As they arrived at the gate, Jack noticed it was tightly locked. Angela pointed to the video doorbell, where a piece of electrical tape covered the camera. "Let's try the back door." Jack drew his Glock, and the two carefully made their way along the wall to the back of the house, finding the small back door ajar. "Home invasion," Jack whispered as they cautiously entered the villa, staying alert to their surroundings. "Possibly. Stay safe and cover each other during the search." Angela moved left while Jack moved right, sweeping from the living room to the front hall. In the hallway leading to the front, Jack noticed a wooden door that looked like a storage room. It was locked from the outside, with muffled groans coming from within. He exchanged glances with Angela and shouted loudly. "Police! Open the door now and put your hands out." Jack aimed his gun at the wooden door while Angela stood to the side and unlocked it. A middle-aged white woman, naked and bound with her mouth gagged, lay on the floor. A similarly bound middle-aged white man, presumably her husband, lay beside her, whimpering when he saw Jack. Jack quickly turned around, waiting for Angela to drape her coat over the woman before holstering his gun and freeing them, removing the gags. "What happened here?" he asked urgently. The middle-aged man, his head bloody and eyes bruised, shouted in a trembling voice. They assaulted Marilyn and Jeff. They took Jeff, our son. There were 2 robbers. They went upstairs. I heard gunshots." Jack tried to calm him down, sensing his extreme distress. "Take it easy. Slow down. You're safe now. How long ago was your son taken?" 20 to 30 minutes. Angela reported to dispatch, "Home invasion, possible hostage situation, conducting a thorough search of the premises." Jack drew his Glock again, instructing the couple to stay put. The villa's second floor had few rooms, only one of which, at the end of the hall, had its door closed. Angela covered while Jack carefully nudged the door open with his foot. A strong smell of blood hit them. A teenager, about 16 or 17, lay on the carpet before the bed, a large portion of the carpet soaked in blood. Jack didn't approach immediately. He moved along the wall, checking the bathroom before calling out to Angela, "Clear." Angela holstered her gun and checked the boy's pulse, though they both knew the heavy blood loss meant he was unlikely to survive. "Jeff." A trembling voice called from behind them. "No, Jeff." Jack quickly grabbed the approaching father, preventing him from reaching the body in his agitated state. Calm down, calm down. I'm so sorry." Jack held the desperate father tightly, offering soft words of comfort. "It's already happened. You need to stay calm. Your wife needs you." Jack knew his words were futile to a grieving father, but he had to try. Half an hour later, Commissioner Gray arrived on the scene, questioning Angela and Jack about the incident. "What's the situation?" he asked. Angela referred to her notes. "The victim is 17-year-old Jeff Christine. He has bullet wounds to his back. We haven't examined him closely yet." "Any other victims?" "Yes, the victim's parents, Matt and Marilyn Christine. They were both assaulted, and the wife may have been sexually assaulted." Commissioner Gray frowned, motioning for them to lower their voices as they moved towards the door. Chapter 70, Pills. "Angela, you have 2 choices now. I can negotiate with Detective Calderon, who is in charge of your case, and you will have 24 hours before the case is officially handed over. I choose the first option." Angela agreed immediately before Chief Gray could mention the second option. As a veteran patrol officer, she had been to many crime scenes, but patrol officers usually only protected the scene and did miscellaneous tasks. Now, having finally become a reserve detective, this was a rare opportunity. "I'll assist Detective Angela." Jack volunteered as well. He had recently acquired entry-level forensic skills and didn't want to miss this opportunity to handle a violent home invasion. Chief Gray nodded. Tell me about your findings. Jack took out a small notebook. After Christine and her husband's emotions had stabilized, he and Angela had conducted an initial inquiry. According to the couple's description, there were two perpetrators, both wearing ski masks. They were white males, possibly Hispanic, around 5 feet 9 inches to 5 feet 11 inches, 175 centimeters to 180 centimeters, with medium builds. The assailant who attacked Mrs. Christine was wearing white sneakers with a red triangle pattern. We have reported this information to the command center, and they will issue a wanted notice. Chief Gray looked satisfied and was about to leave when he thought of something and asked the two. Is there anything else the forensic team should be aware of? They're very busy today and won't arrive at the scene for about 2 hours. Jack looked at Angela, who gestured towards the door. Realizing what she meant, he said, the visual doorbell's camera is covered with electrical tape. They might be able to collect fingerprints from it. Chief Gray nodded again in satisfaction. I'm going to speak with the victims and persuade Mrs. Christine to undergo a forensic examination. I suggest you start investigating the scene before the forensic team arrives, but be careful not to cause any damage. Returning to the second-floor crime scene, Jack and Angela felt a heavy weight in their hearts. A young life had ended before their eyes. Even though the victim was a stranger, the inherent human empathy made them feel sorrowful. Angela put on rubber gloves and lifted the deceased's right arm. Jack was surprised to find another bullet hole above the elbow joint. He quickly checked the bullet hole on the back of the body. From the damaged clothing, he could see that the hole was larger, and the surrounding skin had a star-shaped pattern, which suddenly made him understand. This is an exit wound, meaning the bullet entered through the elbow joint, traveled along the humerus, and exited through the back, severing an artery and causing him to bleed to death. Angela gave him a strange look. Are you trying to compete for the detective position? When did you start studying forensic medicine? Jack habitually wanted to scratch the back of his head but realized he was wearing rubber gloves and had just touched the body. I read a few forensic medicine books during my vacation. Dr. Temperance Brennan has a fascinating book on human bones that I recommend you try. Angela shook her head and sighed. Her partner was not only good-looking and capable, but their teamwork over the past few months had surpassed any previous partnership she had. Unfortunately, he was too driven. It had taken her nearly 10 years to barely qualify for the detective position, while he had been in the LAPD for less than 6 months and was already seen as a rising star. In at most 2 years, with enough experience, he would naturally become a detective. What was most frustrating was that she couldn't feel jealous or accuse him of gender bias because his hard work and progress were evident to the entire precinct. However, Angela's competitive spirit was strong. She pointed to the liquid flowing from the deceased's mouth. What's the deal with the fluid coming from his mouth? Jack hesitated, unsure. Pulmonary edema secretions. The cause of pulmonary edema. Jack was stumped. This was beyond his expertise. Bronchitis or opioid addiction. Angela smiled victoriously. If it's the latter, this case just got interesting. Jack murmured, his eyes scanning the bedroom. Angela subtly blocked a certain angle with her body and continued questioning. Care to share your thoughts? Jack complied, presenting his views one by one. There are no signs of a struggle here, nor was the place ransacked. One intruder was venting his beastly desires downstairs, while the other brought the victim into his bedroom. For what reason? If they intended to assault him, the bed is clean, and the victim's clothes are not disheveled, which doesn't make sense. Jack suddenly had a flash of inspiration. Is it possible that the perpetrator knew the victim? They bypassed the master bedroom, which might have valuables, and instead went to the son's bedroom because it had something they needed. Angela smiled slightly and stepped aside. Like a prescription drug. Behind her, on the floor by the wardrobe, lay a small pill. Jack took a step forward and noticed that the side panel of the wardrobe was slightly raised. A gentle push revealed several identical white pills scattered between the wardrobe panel and the drawer. Angela took out her phone and snapped a couple of photos of the spot. We'll need the forensic team to analyze this, but I can tell at a glance that this is OxyContin. Jack's sympathy for the victim diminished considerably. OxyContin and fentanyl are two of the most common and abused prescription painkillers in the USA. As opioids, these morphine-like substances are highly effective at relieving pain and inducing euphoria, but they are also highly addictive. For well-known reasons, these drugs, originally intended only for end-stage cancer patients, are widely misused to a staggering degree. To make an interesting comparison, if a person in China catches a cold, they might first think of drinking hot water, covering themselves to sweat it out, and if symptoms are severe or a fever persists, they go to a hospital or clinic for cold or fever medicine. Resting for a few days usually resolves it. Some might experience mild complications, like throat inflammation, due to their constitution, and the doctor would prescribe some anti-inflammatory drugs and possibly an 4 drip for a few hours, leading to a quick recovery. Most people follow this procedure, and the cost is generally low. Even without insurance, treatment expenses are usually affordable for the average person. But in the USA, the process is different. The chances of getting onto the 3 Rivers recommendation list are slim. We fell short by 1,000 reads. However, the book is still being published. I hope you continue to support me so I don't end up forgotten. Chapter 71, Unforeseen Complications. When an American catches a cold, even those with insurance are often reluctant to go to the hospital. Usually, doctors will simply send them home, advising them to drink cold water, take some vitamin C, and get bed rest. Some people might obediently follow this advice, though the effectiveness can vary. However, this treatment plan isn't very friendly to others. Bed rest means temporarily giving up work, losing income, missing planned parties, and not being able to spend a long-awaited weekend with a loved one. This is unacceptable for many, but if they want to get a quick anti-inflammatory drip like in China, to rapidly alleviate symptoms like body aches, nasal congestion, and runny nose caused by a cold, they must patiently wait in line. Unless they go to an expensive private hospital, by the time it's their turn for the drip in a public hospital, the cold might have already cleared up on its own after half a month. Thus, these people often resort to another option. Just like in pre-1949 China, where many poor people, unable to access any medical resources, turned to opium as a miracle cure-all, in modern-day America, opium's synthetic relatives, like OxyContin and fentanyl, are similarly packaged as miracle drugs. Got a cold? Take 3 pills a day and say goodbye to all discomfort. Toothache? Take 3 pills a day, and the pain will go away as the nerves decay. Menstrual cramps? Take 3 pills a day, and get through the period with ease. Within a month, these people will find they can no longer live without these small painkillers. The extent of opioid abuse in America can be illustrated by one statistic: a country with just over 300 million people consumes 80% of the world's opioids. In the trunk of LAPD officer Jack's patrol car, there's an emergency kit that always includes a spray called naloxone, specifically used to save those on the brink of death from opioid overdose. So, the robbers were actually after these prescription drugs? Jack's question was answered. Angela pointed to the nails sticking out from the raised floorboard. See the plastic bag fragments on the nails. The pills were in a plastic bag that got torn when they pulled it out, spilling a few. Jack could now roughly picture what had happened. The assailant, having obtained what they wanted, probably let their guard down. They might have planned to take a couple of pills right there and then join their partner downstairs. The victim, thinking he saw an opportunity, tried to grab the weapon. In the ensuing chaos, the gun went off, and the panicked killer fled with their accomplice. It seems like a straightforward case. So, how do we find the killers next? Angela, operating her phone without looking up, asked in return. If you were me, what would you do? Feeling like he was back in the police academy taking his final exam, Jack quickly recalled what he had learned. Find out who knew the victim had these prescription drugs. They must be connected to him in some way. Find his classmates, close friends. The victim was just a teenager, he couldn't have obtained these drugs on his own. Someone among them must know something, or the killer could be one of them. Then, eliminate the elderly, children, and those whose height and build don't match the description given by Christine and her husband. Investigate the background of the remaining people to see if any have ties to drugs or illegal substances. So, what are we waiting for? Angela showed Jack her phone screen. I found his school, an expensive private prep school not far from here. Let's go ask around. In the afternoon, when Jack and Angela returned to the precinct, Chief Gray called them into his office. Any results from your investigation? Jack silently deferred to Angela. As just an assistant, he knew when to step back. Angela, a true American, had no such reservations. We spoke with some of the victim's friends. The victim underwent a phase of addiction recovery treatment 3 months ago, which the Christine couple never mentioned. This matches the secretions found at the corners of the victim's mouth, which only occur in those with bronchitis or opioid addiction. Chief Gray's lips curved slightly. Facing Angela, he assumed the role of examiner. But accessing the victim's addiction recovery records requires a court order. You have less than 20 hours left. How do you plan to find his addict friends? Angela, unhurried and mischievous, replied, "Fortunately, I brought Wilshire's youngest and most handsome officer." He easily got the suspect's name from the victim's ex-girlfriend, Bruno Vinci, who lives in Highland Park. The victim, Jeff, was selling prescription drugs to his rich classmates on behalf of this person during school. Chief Gray was very pleased. He opened the office door and walked out. "I'll get an emergency search warrant from the judge. You inform Bradford and Harper's teams to take immediate action." "Damn it." Angela swore angrily. When the team, fully armed, broke into Bruno Vinci's residence, they found a body lying in a pool of blood, a blood-stained baseball bat, and a shattered phone beside it. White sneakers with a red triangle. This Bruno Vinci is the one who attacked Mrs. Christine. Chief Gray holstered his gun and kicked the shoes on the corpse's feet. This death is pretty brutal. Would drug dealers really kill someone so violently over some prescription drugs? Aren't they known for execution-style killings, like a shot to the back of the head? Jack muttered, still unwilling to give up, squatting down to check the body's pulse. To everyone's shock, the body suddenly opened its eyes. Rushing the severely injured drug dealer Bruno Vinci to the hospital, Angela and Jack exchanged looks. John, taking the opportunity to see his old flame, dragged Gallus over to ask about the situation. Gallus shook her head. Severe brain trauma. Even if he survives, he'll likely be in a vegetative state. The patient is in a deep coma now and won't wake up anytime soon. Angela sighed. It was already 7 p.m., and Chief Gray had only given them 24 hours. That meant they had until noon the next day to catch the other killer or obtain decisive evidence, or the case would be handed over to a full-fledged detective. Having investigated the case to this extent, its outline was clear. Even an idiot could solve it with enough time. What they lacked most now was time. Once the case was transferred, all their efforts would have been for nothing. Chapter 72, a small gathering. Let's go to my place, make some good food, and go over the case again. We might get some unexpected insights. Jack invited John to bring Gallus along and drove with Angela to the supermarket to buy a bunch of groceries before heading to his house. This white 2-story house had recently been renovated. John had mostly helped with the kitchen before his vacation, and during the following 2 weeks, Jack had installed a large bathtub in the first-floor bathroom, cleared out most of the old furniture, and repainted the walls. The house looked the same from the outside, but the interior was now completely refreshed. It was almost exactly how Jack had dreamed of, except for a few missing appliances. As soon as Jack got home, he headed to the kitchen to start cooking, letting the others explore the house. "What's up? You look like you have something to say." Jack, busy in the kitchen, noticed John looking as if he wanted to speak but was hesitant. "Did you do all this by yourself?" John gestured to indicate the entire house. "Yep, I spent most of my 2-week vacation on this. I also reworked some of the electrical wiring in a few rooms. Though it seems fine, I'd like you to check it over." Jack tasted the food and added a bit more water to the borscht, turning down the heat. After this round of renovations, the skills he'd acquired from friends of military and civilian talents had mostly advanced to proficient. However, his small savings were almost depleted. If it weren't for the bonus he received after the terror attack case, he might not have been able to pay the bills this month. "If my former business partner had half your work efficiency, I'd be rich by now." Jack guessed John's true thoughts behind his capitalist remark. "You want to remodel your house too, right?" "No problem, I can help whenever I have time." Jack recalled that John had been renovating his house for over a year, encountering numerous issues like electrical fires and collapsing shelves. In hindsight, it was quite amusing. John, grateful, picked up a tomato from the cutting board. "What do you need me to do?" "Just slice this and these cucumbers." Jack handed him a few cucumbers. There were quite a few people today, and they were all hungry. Although John's culinary skills were mediocre, he was a middle-aged man with plenty of life experience and could at least handle prep work. Jack put a whole chicken wrapped in foil into the oven and set the timer. He drained the oil from the fried peanuts and sprinkled them with a bit of sea salt while they were still hot. Soon, a plate of peanuts, a dish of smashed cucumbers, and a bowl of sweet tomatoes were on the table, along with some ready-to-eat sausages and other cold dishes from the supermarket. Dinner will be ready in 40 minutes. Help yourselves to some snacks first. Jack hesitated about whether to open a bottle of herb water. He was short on cash lately and had forgotten to buy some wine for the house. All he had was the Chinese liquor, but considering they still had to discuss the case, getting drunk didn't seem appropriate. At that moment, the doorbell rang, and Wesley, whom Angela had called over, appeared with a bottle of Harlan Estate red wine. Angela went to greet him, and after a bit of affectionate exchange, they joined the others in the living room. Unlike Westerners who typically separate their living and dining areas, Jack had combined his due to remodeling the kitchen, which took up part of the dining space. He had a large square table in the middle, big enough to seat 3 on each side. Although it might seem unusual compared to the long dining tables common in Western homes, this was his own house. Everyone took their seats. John and Angela, having eaten at Jack's place often, were adept with chopsticks, so he only prepared Western utensils for Wesley and Dr. Gallus. Tim and Lucy weren't there, and John secretly felt relieved not to see a hot pot on the table. The spicy meal from a few weeks ago had been tough on him. Jack, noticing John's expression, chuckled to himself. He hadn't expected that a Sichuan hot pot could have such a strong effect, sending both middle-aged men with hemorrhoids to the hospital. However, he did provide some aftercare. During the delivery of 2 tubes of Ma Yinglong ointment from China, he experimented with his master-level healing skills on them and was pleasantly surprised to find that what used to be instant healing now had a lasting effect. Previously, his advanced healing was a divine skill, but using it discreetly was challenging. For example, when he rescued the county officer who had lost his left foot, most of his mental effort was spent controlling the healing range to avoid suspicion. If he used his full power, closing the wound instantly, John might have considered it a miracle. Now, the healing skill could also work in a sustained manner, like a game skill that provides continuous health regeneration. This made Jack wonder. If he cast a healing spell on himself before a firefight, would it allow him to survive a headshot and regenerate? Although he wasn't sure if the newly grown brain would still be him. Of course, this was just a fantasy. With his current rate of attribute growth, in a few years, when his mental and physical stats broke 30, he might survive even in a hail of bullets. Dodging every bullet might be an exaggeration, but turning fatal wounds into serious injuries and serious injuries into minor ones would be possible. Due to the time constraints, today's dinner was relatively simple. Besides the cold dishes, there was a roast chicken made from a whole Rhode Island red, borscht, and some dumplings Jack had stored in the freezer during Christmas. Feeding 5 people wouldn't be an issue. No one present was particularly devout, so they were used to talking while eating. The conversation centered around today's case. Wesley, since the terror attack, had become one of them and knew when to keep quiet. Gallus was also considered an insider, and since she treated the drug dealer nearly beaten to death, they didn't need to hold back. Angela, what are your thoughts on Bruno? Jack started the conversation. The case wasn't particularly large or complicated, but it was his first official participation in solving a case. If it were handed over, he'd feel a bit unsatisfied, so his concern was no less than Angela's. Chapter 73, Foolish Policeman. Angela, who rarely lacked an appetite, toyed with her wine glass, swirling the remaining wine inside, her brows furrowed. The suspect's illegal break-in was clearly an attempt to catch Jeff and obtain the contraband drugs. This suggests Jeff either stole these items from him or owed him money. But I can't figure out why there would be internal strife among the suspects. Forensics found several types of contraband at Bruno's house, which means the conflict wasn't caused by unevenly splitting the spoils. Jack scratched his head. Could it be that it's not an internal conflict, but the suspect has other enemies? But he quickly dismissed his own guess. That would be too much of a coincidence, happening just a few hours later. Dr. Garris, after hearing John's account of the case, couldn't help but express her sympathy. This family is so unfortunate, especially the father. Losing his son over a small bag of pills and his wife being assaulted right in front of him. Everyone felt a pang of emotion, even Wesley raised his hand. Is it possible that the father actually saw the suspects and recognized them on the spot? Maybe he lied to you. John agreed and put himself in the father's shoes. If anyone dared to hurt my Henry, I'd definitely seek blood for blood. Angela's brow relaxed, and she set down her wine glass. Matt Kristen paid for his son Jeff's rehab. He kept this from us not because he was ashamed, but because Jeff likely met Bruno at the rehab center, and Matt, who visited his son there, probably recognized Bruno today and decided to take revenge himself. Jack continued excitedly but then felt a bit disappointed. But this doesn't help us find the other killer. Angela, however, seemed to have renewed hope. Regardless, tomorrow we'll summon Matt to the station for further questioning to see if he recognizes the other suspect. The next morning, at the interrogation room door, Jack and Angela glanced at Matt Kristen, who was waiting inside. The grief-stricken father still bore fresh bruises on his face and looked exhausted. How do we question him? Good cop, bad cop. Are you playing the good cop or the bad cop? Jack was eager to use his advanced psychology skills. Angela shook her head. We're not interrogating a suspect. We need to be sympathetic and foolish. You play the fool. She handed him a bottle of mineral water and a folder. Mr. Kristen, thank you for coming to the station again. How's Marilyn today? Angela handed over the water with genuine concern. Ah, thank you. We didn't sleep last night. Marilyn, she cried non-stop. Yesterday was a nightmare for her. Matt Kristen's eyes were still red and swollen, though he seemed cooperative despite his low spirits. Angela apologized, trying to comfort him. I'm sorry for your loss. We just have a few more questions, then you can go home and be with her. I know she needs you now more than ever. As Matt nodded absent-mindedly, Jack opened the folder and began questioning in a businesslike manner. Was Jeff continuously taking prescription painkillers? We found OxyContin in his room. Matt explained with some frustration. He hurt his knee last year, and the damn doctor prescribed it. He got addicted for a while, but then I sent him to rehab. The Malibu Recovery Center. I heard it's very expensive. Yes, but I thought it was worth it. Though he admitted it easily, it was clear he was trying to downplay the situation. Jack nodded and asked, so you didn't know Jeff hadn't fully kicked the habit? Matt's face showed shock and regret. No, I had no idea. He must have hidden the pills. Damn it, Marilyn and I didn't even notice. Jack handed over a photo of a badly beaten face. Oh, sorry, wrong photo. He searched the folder but found nothing else. This man is Bruno Vinci. This was his condition when we found him yesterday. It's a different case, but we discovered he was also a patient at Malibu Recovery. We're looking into a possible connection. Matt stared at the photo, lost in thought, then snapped back and asked, what does this have to do with the break-in at my house? Is it related to Jeff? Jack, seemingly careless, spilled the beans. The Robbery-Homicide Division dumped this case on us yesterday, as if we weren't busy enough. We found out this guy was at the same rehab as Jeff. So we suspect both cases are drug-related, and the perpetrators might have been after Jeff and then went for Bruno. Do you know this man? Matt quickly denied, no, I don't know him. Is he dead? Jack shrugged. No, but he's in a coma. The doctors say even if he recovers, he'll be a vegetable. Seeing a flash of relief in Matt's eyes, Jack and Angela exchanged a knowing glance. Angela then impatiently glared at Jack. Go find a better photo of Bruno for Mr. Kristen to identify. If we can't find a connection, we'll hand this case back to Robbery-Homicide. We don't have time to clean up their mess. As Jack hurried out of the room, Angela apologized to Matt. I'm very sorry, Mr. Kristen. He's only been on the job for 6 months. Young people are enthusiastic, but they can be. Matt returned to his distracted state, nodding absently. After a while, Jack came back with a clearer photo. Matt again denied knowing Bruno and then left. Watching Matt Kristen slightly hunched back as he departed, Jack suddenly lost the joy of uncovering the truth. He noticed that, compared to yesterday, This unfortunate man's hair had turned significantly whiter overnight. Chapter 74, My Heart is Dead. I suddenly understand why Tim was always content with patrol work, Angela said softly. Jack could only respond with a bitter smile. The saying, there is no perfect solution, often applies to more than just relationships. When it comes to law enforcement and dealing with both suspects and victims, the choices can be equally tough. From the moment they discovered the case's root cause was illegal drugs, Jack's former disdain for drug addicts made him lose all sympathy for the so-called victim. Now, he realized he had completely overlooked the feelings of the deceased's parents. Regardless of Mrs. Kristen's tragic fate or Matt Kristen's efforts to save his son, these unfortunate parents were innocent victims in the whole ordeal. Even if Matt had concealed his son's drug addiction from the police, it was likely out of a desire for revenge. As a father, he had done everything he could. At that moment, Superintendent Gray's voice came from behind them. How's the investigation going? We can be almost certain that Matt attacked Bruno, but we don't know if he recognized Bruno's accomplice, Angela replied. Keep an eye on him. Here's Bruno's phone call log. Check it out, it might yield some results. Angela nodded. I've had the intelligence department install a tracker on Matt's car. Neera and John will monitor and report his movements. Jack took the documents from Superintendent Gray. I'll investigate these phone numbers. There weren't many numbers in the call log, and Jack quickly found a lead. Tony Craig, likely Bruno's accomplice. They had frequent contact before the break-in. This guy has a bunch of minor offenses, mostly drug-related. Address? Angela asked urgently. An apartment near Century City. Damn, Angela cursed, frustrated. Neera just reported losing Matt. He abandoned his car in an underground garage near a mall in Century City and vanished. I'll send them the address and have them go directly there. We need to talk to Mrs. Kristen, Jack said, rising quickly and driving with Angela to the Kristens' villa. Do you think we should stop Matt's revenge? Angela asked, breaking the somber silence in the car after a long pause. Jack was silent for a long time before replying in a muffled voice, I've thought about it a lot. Letting Matt have his revenge might be a bigger mistake. Angela looked puzzled, waiting for him to continue. Mrs. Kristen was violated and lost her son. If she loses her husband too, Matt would likely only be charged with second-degree murder. Their family is wealthy enough to afford a good lawyer. With the jury's sympathy, he'd probably get a lighter sentence, allowing him to take care of his wife and let time heal everything. Angela's eyes lit up. So you're saying we must stop him? Jack nodded. Although I hate to admit my double standards, I think this family has suffered enough. If it were me, I might choose perfect revenge, but for them, maybe there's a better option. Angela, not one for hesitation, agreed. All right, for Mrs. Kristen's sake, let's give it our all and leave the rest to God. They soon arrived at the villa, but despite ringing the doorbell for a long time, there was no answer. Jack grew alarmed and called Mrs. Kristen's phone, but it went to voicemail after several rings. Both of their faces darkened. Jack hesitated before suggesting, should we check inside? I fear Mrs. Kristen's life may be in danger. Angela rolled her eyes but didn't argue. Without a warrant, it wasn't the time to hesitate. They drew their guns, went around to the side door like yesterday, and Jack kicked it open, quickly entering the villa. Damn it. In the first-floor bathroom, they found Mrs. Kristen lying in the bathtub. The water was stained red with blood from a deep cut on her wrist. She's still breathing. Call 911. Jack quickly used his healing spell to stabilize her vital signs. Thankfully, they found her in time, and she hadn't lost a fatal amount of blood. Wait, check her phone. Angela grabbed the phone from the bathroom counter, used Mrs. Kristen's fingerprint to unlock it, and looked through the contents. Matt said he caught the men and is taking him to the factory to finish his revenge. Mrs. Kristen replied that she'd wait for them in hell. Both of them. Matt wants to die with Tony Craig. Jack, anxious, pulled out his phone and contacted Superintendent Gray. Does Matt own any factories? He might be taking the suspect there. As they loaded Mrs. Kristen into an ambulance, Superintendent Gray sent over the factory address. We're closest. It should take less than 10 minutes. Jack got into the car, turned on the sirens, and floored the gas pedal, causing the tires to screech as they headed to the factory. Matt owned a medium-sized construction company. The factory was a huge steel-framed warehouse filled with trucks and construction vehicles. When they arrived, they saw Matt Kristen standing on a truck cab, pulling on a steel cable with a loop at the end. "Matt, where's Craig?" Angela raised her Glock but hesitated and lowered it again. "He deserves to die. Now it's all over, or it soon will be." Matt ignored their weapons, adjusting the loop to head height, a look of resignation in his eyes. "Marilyn is safe. We got to your house in time to save her. She's in the hospital now, receiving treatment. Believe me, she needs you right now." Angela holstered her gun, trying to persuade Matt, who didn't seem to have Tony Craig around. "That bastard killed my son." Matt trembled as he fixed the loop and grasped it with both hands. Jack put away his Glock but pulled out his Anaconda revolver. If it weren't for only having one gold coin left in the system, he would have upgraded his marksmanship to master level on the spot. "The moment I saw my son's body in the bedroom, Marilyn and my hearts died. The only reason we kept going was for revenge. Now that it's done, everything should end. Now with the evidence, Tony Craig will pay for his crimes. You still have a family. Think about Marilyn, she needs you now." Angela watched helplessly as Matt put his head into the loop. She turned and saw Jack holding the Anaconda revolver, aiming steadily at Matt. Chapter 75, Treatment. Matt gave a bitter smile. "This family is done for, we've decided to join Jeff together." With that, he placed his head into the steel cable loop and prepared to jump. In that split second, the revolver in Jack's hand went off. 3 consecutive shots rang out, and the taut steel cable was severed. Jack lunged forward and caught the falling Matt. He wasn't trying to play a game of thrills. Although the distance was close and the steel cable was about the thickness of a pinky finger, it was swaying left and right, making it quite challenging to sever it with a single shot. Fortunately, luck was on his side. Before Matt's weight could tighten the cable enough to break his neck, Jack's first bullet hit its mark. "Watch him. I know where Tony Craig is." Matt dumped him into the cement pool. Jack pressed lightly on Matt's carotid artery, rendering him unconscious, and handed him over to Angela. There were many construction vehicles in the factory, but only one concrete mixer truck nearby was running and making a constant noise. Jack ran over to the concrete mixer truck in a few strides, jumped into the pool filled with concrete, and soon found a human body inside. Pulling an adult out of viscous concrete is more difficult than rescuing someone from a pool, but Jack's strength, now at a level of 22, surpassed that of most people. Jack dragged Tony Craig to the edge of the pool and slapped him on the back, causing a mix of saliva and wet concrete to spew out. It wasn't out of compassion but because this guy couldn't die now. If he did, Matt would face life imprisonment at least. His poor wife was still lying in the central hospital. "Well done, kid. I didn't expect the idea of shooting to save someone." Angela, handcuffing the revived Matt, was about to high-five Jack in celebration but stepped back in disgust. This guy was covered in wet cement, and her $160 would be down the drain again. Jack handed Tony Craig over to the colleagues who came to reinforce, turned off the cement-covered law enforcement recorder, and whispered a few words in Matt's ear. The middle-aged man, looking ashen, was stunned for a moment, then gazed at Jack with gratitude before being willingly led to the police car. Angela, curious, whispered, "What did you say to him? He doesn't seem to want to die anymore." Jack shrugged, "I just asked him, in this country, there's nothing money can't solve, so why insist on personal revenge? Hey, you're a cop. That's why I told him secretly. Besides, cops are people too," Jack said with a matter-of-fact expression. Bang. A heavy punch landed on Jack's raised arms, which were in a defensive stance, knocking him off balance. This was in Hannah's training room. Christian Wolf had been living in Jack's original loft for half a month. Every day after work, Jack would come over to give him so-called acupuncture followed by desensitization therapy. In the movie, this accountant would also desensitize himself by regularly taking anti-anxiety sertraline, then stimulating himself with loud music and flashing lights in a dark room, while pain from a stick pressing against his shin would divert his attention. This was the reason why Christian, who also had Asperger's syndrome, could barely live and work like a normal person, while Justin could only hide in a research institute, communicating with people through synthetic speech. As Jack had anticipated, even master-level healing techniques couldn't completely cure Asperger's syndrome. He could repair the abnormal neural development in Christian's brain, but the psychological issues caused by a lifelong physiological condition were beyond his healing capabilities. Just as modern medicine can help people quit physiological drug addiction but not psychological dependence, the same applies to compulsive gamblers and drug addicts. They are beyond cure. Luckily, Jack's psychology skills came into play. He tailored a new desensitization therapy for Christian. In Hannah's training room, Jack would wear earplugs and engage in hand-to-hand combat with Christian amidst flashing lights and blaring music. Initially, Christian was utterly defenseless. In less than 3 minutes, he would collapse in pain, unable to perform any defensive actions despite Jack's punches and kicks. He was then dragged out of the training room like a dead dog. After a brief recovery, he was required to sit cross-legged and learn meditation. Jack would light an incense stick and play some ambient sounds, such as the babbling of a brook, the rustling of leaves, and bird songs in a forest, to help him get into a meditative state. 2 weeks later, the accountant could now ignore the auditory and visual stimuli and engage in a back-and-forth fight with Jack. Bang! Blocking another heavy roundhouse kick, Jack swiftly floored his opponent and made a feint at his eyes, signaling the end of the fight. Today's bout lasted nearly 40 minutes, exhausting both of them. Besides, he had no interest in ground fighting with another man. Turning off the lights and music, Jack helped the panting accountant to his feet. "Christian, I think your issue is mostly resolved. With regular exercise, you should be able to maintain this state. Then can I have as many girlfriends as you do?" Jack looked at him in surprise. "You've learned to make jokes already. Just call me Chris." Was that joke a bit much? The accountant wore a goofy smile that didn't match his usual stern face. Jack covered his face with a palm, looking pained. "If you can stop smiling like that, you might have even more girlfriends than I do." It seemed the treatment was a bit overdone. The formerly stoic accountant now always wore a goofy grin and was eager to communicate with people, even making a joke today. "Still, you need to manage your expressions. What's your plan for Justin?" Jack couldn't stay away from LA for long. He had to save his vacation for Hannah. When she returned from Quantico, they would prepare to head to Margrave, Georgia. "I'll talk directly to Professor Hubble and then bring Justin to you with my trailer." Jack's eyelid twitched at the thought of the stuff in Chris's trailer. Besides various contraband weapons, it was filled with gold bars and multi-million-dollar paintings.